This is CBS 2 News at 5.
Good evening, I'm Jim Williams.
And I'm Mai Martinez. Thank you for joining us. We begin with the continuing crisis in Egypt because of anti-government protest. At least 62 people have been killed in demonstrations and clashes with police. And there are reports of widespread looting in the streets of Cairo.
Also, serious concern about whether the military will be able to protect some of the country's priceless artifacts, including the Egyptian Museum. CBS 2's Scott Goldberg has the very latest.
A police van pushed protesters back in Alexandria, Egypt, but nothing has contained the anger spilling out all over the city. They lit vehicles on fire, attacked police stations, and rioted in the streets. An army commander warned a crowd of thousands in Cairo to stay inside once night fell. But many ignored the 4 p.m. curfew. President Hosni Mubarak swore in a vice president for the first time in 30 years, suggesting that the violent protests may have forced the leader to devise a succession plan. The U.S. had urged Mubarak to take concrete action before the new vice president was announced. Hundreds of protesters gathered at the United Nations Saturday afternoon, one of more than a dozen demonstrations across the U.S.
Enough is enough. People are killing each other in Egypt, and you're using the army against the people now.
The protesters say they came here to express solidarity with the people protesting on the streets in Egypt and to call on the Obama administration to take a tougher stand.
More protesters gathered in Paris, London, and Beirut. At the White House, President Obama met with his national security team. The president reiterated the need for Egypt to use restraint against the uprising.
And there was a major show of solidarity for Egypt right here in Chicago.
Demonstrators lined Michigan Avenue to call for Egypt's president to step down. CBS 2's Mike Puccinelli just got back from that protest and joins us live now from the newsroom. Mike.
Maya, it was a quickly arranged protest. The call only went out last night on social media websites, but that didn't prevent hundreds of people from walking Michigan Avenue today to call for the end of a 30-year dictatorship. In English and in Arabic, hundreds of people marched in front of the Egyptian Consulate today in downtown Chicago, demanding that Hosni Mubarak give up control of that North African country.
People in Chicago should care because the Obama administration has taken a position on this issue. While supporting the right of the people to express themselves, they've at the same time expressed support for the presence of Hosni Mubarak. And that's exactly what the people of Egypt don't want anymore.
Sharif Zaki lived in Egypt for most of his life before moving here 5 years ago. Most of his family is still over there. He says the fact that Mubarak has named a vice president isn't enough. He says the only solution that will end the violence in his homeland is for Mubarak to step down.
Let's assume Mubarak is the best president in the world. Isn't 30 years enough? I always ask myself that question. Isn't 30 years enough?
The uprising in Egypt follows one in Tunisia that led to the ouster of that country's dictator. Now the protesters want Mubarak to be the next dictator to be brought down by people power. That despite the fact that the U.S. has supported the Mubarak regime for decades with tens of billions of dollars in aid. Now the protesters say it's time for Washington to support ordinary Egyptians.
And it's for the sake of democracy, which has obviously not been going over there for quite some time. And the people are rising up and demanding their human rights. And we stand behind them as our friends and just as other human beings.
Now in Washington, there's concern because democracy isn't always predictable, and it's not clear what people or political parties will fill the power vacuum if Mubarak is forced out. Egypt also controls the Suez Canal. Any disruption to that vital shipping lane would send shockwaves all across the global economy. Jim and Mike?
CBS 2's Mike Puccinelli in the newsroom. Thanks, Mike. And be sure to stay with us. CBS Evening News is next with the very latest on this developing story.
Chicago police are investigating the murder of a man shot to death in a car this morning in the Back of the Yards neighborhood.